poisoned landscape left by the region's industrial past can no longer be ignored. The artists in the northeast are the advance guard in the reclamation of this forbidden ground. The Victorian captains of industry celebrated their own successes with public statues that were memorials to their own egos. Their statues were only public in the sense that they were sited in prominent civic places. Today, a more democratic approach that produces work more genuinely public than individual is needed.
The term public art has been around for some time, but over the last 5 years, there's a particularly strong bandwagon rolling about what public art means. It seems to me to be going down one particular direction, but I don't think we can assume that there is a consensus about what the word public means. I prefer to replace the word public with the word social, because that suggests use rather than just simply location. In that sense, if you, instead of saying public art, public space, if you talk about social space and social art.
In the northeast, two boroughs, Gateshead and Middlesbrough, have been in the forefront of commissioning public art. For Gateshead in particular, sculpture is part of their civic policy.
I think this has given rise to a greater critical appreciation of the built environment, and Gateshead residents, I think, now are much more prepared to comment on their surroundings. I would like to think also, and I think there is evidence to show this, that people of Gateshead do feel a sense of ownership for their environment, and while sort of statements like, you know, reclaiming a place on the landscape for the common man is a bit grandiose, nonetheless I feel that Gateshead people are trying to rediscover and reclaim the territory that probably has not been theirs for generations because of the Industrial Revolution. And now as land is coming back into public use and public ownership, public art is one way of them contributing something to their local environment.
Internationally successful and prize-winning sculptor Richard Declan is one of the artists working on Gateshead's Riverside Sculpture Park.
Gateshead, in terms of local authorities, is one of the most enlightened, or if not the most enlightened local authorities in the country, because their commitment is to the commissioning of work. I think Gateshead also doesn't seem to have fallen into this trap, that art can be used to tidy up, to salvage the conscience of a post-industrial mess.
Deacon's work for Gateshead is actually being made at Amark Training Centre in Middlesbrough. Like Gateshead, Middlesbrough has recognised the importance of public art in the regeneration of the town. Despite a shortage of money and other priorities, interesting artworks have appeared.
I think we started off, there wasn't really a great deal of public sculpture in Middlesbrough, and obviously there, you know, people have probably lost the awareness of public sculpture in our towns and cities. If we look back in history, there was a lot of statues, a lot of decoration, and most streets were very rich. Today we haven't got that decoration, and so what we've sought to do is, initially to start in a fairly small way, we've tried to look for work that has popular appeal. The really natural progression from that, once we got a variety of work in the town centre, was perhaps to go for something that was more ambitious.
With considerable help from Northern Arts, Middlesbrough Council have attracted to the region one of the most famous sculptors in the world, Klaus Oldenburg and his wife Kosha. They are making a 30-foot-high steel bottle for the newly landscaped city centre.
I came to Middlesbrough and picked up as much as I could and returned then to New York and discussed it with Kosha, and after a few months, we came up with the notion of the bottle of notes. It is a poetic concept, but it uses some very specific things, such as a quotation from Captain Cook, who is a big figure around these areas. This quote of Captain Cook's became the substance of the bottle, so that there's a pun here, a bottle of notes as well, a bottle made of notes. And it's made of the writing of Captain Cook. And then inserted in the bottle, in the tradition of bottles floating in the sea and so on, is a note on a much more intimate level, which is a poetic description by Koosje of a recollection from her past in the Netherlands.
So in the best way, we try to find for each community where we go an emblem or a sign that really sums up what they are about. And hopefully, if you make a sculpture which is good and in a way goes beyond a local situation and turns into a universal artwork, at that moment you have created something that is a sign of hope. To me, it seems to be an important thing to have culture as part of a community.
The largest reclamation scheme recently has been the Gateshead Garden Festival. Artworks have played a significant role here, and many will remain now that the festival has closed.
Gateshead local people viewed the site, I think, very much as a mess. An old cokework site. It had probably been much of a pain for them when they lived around about with smoke and steam and dirt and grime. They were probably very pleased to see the site go, but in the period between the site going and us starting here was, well, it was a rather sorry state of affairs. It's been a very big task. We've spent something like £3 million on reclaiming this site. £3 million of the government's money, I should perhaps emphasise. But the biggest problem that we faced was really a problem of contamination, because with the cokeworks, you've got some really nasty substances which have been left over after the cokeworks has been taken away, and we've had to deal with those and make the site safe so it can be developed.
Regeneration of landscape, I'd say, where land is reclaimed and then there's regeneration of a number of things. The role of artists in general revitalisation of an area is terribly important and has been proved so in places far apart as Seattle and Glasgow. And in the northeast, obviously, the investment of Northern Arts in their programme for public art, and Gateshead in particular, which has a very, very commendable programme for the siting of public art, obviously plays terrific dividends.
I was quite daunted when I first saw the site. It was very scruffy, and I had no real clear view of what I could possibly do. When Isabelle Vasseur asked me to come and look at it, she said that no one had really had an idea for it, and she thought it would be a good site to do something with. My first impression was that I felt that something fairly large scale would have to be done.
We would simply make them as invisible as possible. We could possibly put a grill over them, or fill them with the chip that we were discussing, but possibly using as the bedding area.
Yes, I think if we could fill them in, absolutely.
Just to make them as invisible as possible.
Yes. I mean, because the important thing is that the site should actually be totally sort of filled with the figures, as far as possible.
And unbroken.
And unbroken, that's right.
Making large-scale sculptures increasingly involves the cooperation of the artist and heavy engineering, as the scale of the sculpture requires the techniques of industrial manufacture.
Swan hunters are involved in fabricating some of the major works. It seems philosophically right to be using the shipbuilding skills when we're in an area which is still a shipbuilding area. It's very, very exciting what you can do with 8mm steel and a lot of welding. It's beyond the wildest dreams of an artist in his own studio.
It's actually curved. Yeah. It becomes slightly sort of jagged around.
Well, you know, when you work on your own, you're totally self-absorbed in a sense with your project. But working in conjunction with other companies has been a kind of opening out experience for me. It's marvellous to come down and to be able to talk about the problems with specialists in all the different areas. The work is on such a vast scale that there's no way I could have created it single-handedly.
Another garden festival artist who benefited from the assistance of industry was Andy Miller.
I think that's a happy coincidence on my part, because when I first did it, I wasn't thinking in terms of the history of Tyneside and the shipyards and that very long tradition of the craft involved in making ships. But since they've been building it here, it's really been a very happy accident as far as I'm concerned. It's an extra level that's been put into it for the craft that's been gone into it from Swan Hunters as well. Coming to Swan Hunters, it's the sheer scale of the place, really. They just took it in sections and they built it up into what it is. And I didn't conceive that's how they're going to do it at all. It's been a very good experience.
You guys always not on a job, you know, we've all got to hurry.
I really didn't know at all, because I've never been involved with working with someone else to make a piece of sculpture of mine. I've always been in total control of finding materials, making it, and decision-making at every level. And coming to Swan Hunters, I was very apprehensive about where the decision-making would end and stop, and how much control I still retained. But it's worked out very well.
There's only two of them done the whole job. They've done the whole job between them, the two of them. Nobody else has been on the job till the last day. 6 weeks. It's been good experience for David, you see. David's just a young journeyman. So the shape and that is all, you know, under any supervision, like, he's done a grand job. This is what it's all about, you know. All experience for him.
The fact that they're working within a locality that has a particular and very strong industrial history. That process whereby they would make the forms which would contain their ideas had to engage with that industrial history. So they're using the processes which are also locally available, so it's also expedient. That idea of addressing the locality, whether that locality is a series of domestic houses or the wider region in its history or a particular street or a monument or whatever, that is the key principle in this whole approach.
One of the few women to enter the field of public art uses an industrial process directly. Working with the scrap offcuts of industry is sculptor Sally Matthews.
As far as I was concerned, it was a good site for what I wanted to do, and it just so happened that it came about that I was using steel and things. It was probably an influence of the area, you know, but it wasn't sort of a conscious thing at all. I'm using metal really because the site at Beamish where they're going needed something fairly big, and because it's a path, I always imagined cows walking down a path back from milking. Therefore they had to be fairly strong just in the size of them. So I thought it's got to really have a strong armature for a start. It was the Concert to Sunderland railway path which took the steel from Concert to the coast. I'd worked in scrap metal a little bit at college, and I thought it'd be quite exciting to do something big and permanent. Animals in general, because I like them a lot, and I enjoyed watching them to start with and sketching them. I'd say that's why animals and why cows. It's a lovely cutting, so they'll be framed by these two bridges that are on the site.
So we're finding
It's
bits.
got bits welded on, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're finding bits that's like straight, so we cut it on a machine. We just get the machine in and it doesn't work.
Do you get job satisfaction then? I mean, you said that it's not the same as like watching a ship go out anymore.
With you do it yourself, you know. With me, I do so much stuff. You get the welder in, and the burner in, and whoever, and it's like a group thing. Everybody works together and everybody mucks in.
Yeah, I was quite jealous in fact of that the other day actually when you were working with Alan on that plate. And you were both thinking about, you know, how to do it. And, you know, and it's really nice that sort of working out together of how,
it's good,
best to do it and things. So I have to do that with myself. I have to sort of talk to myself.
I often taught myself, you know.
This work by Sally Matthews is sited in a semi-rural setting, a disused railway line. But her work is part of a wider movement to refocus our attitudes to landscapes left uncared for, as increasingly art has to be seen to be growing from the landscape rather than being imposed upon it. This gives new meaning to the term landscape art and greater responsibility to the artists who choose to work in this way as they become the shock troops of the regeneration movement. Artists working on a large scale cannot expect to work alone, particularly if the site they choose dictates a large artwork. Ray Smith had to face both these issues in constructing his Red Army for his site at the Gateshead Garden Festival.
I sat down and did some drawings of figures and realised that there would have to be a lot of figures on the site, and what could they be doing? One would have to find some kind of diagrammatic gesture, and I just happened to draw a figure with their hands up, and it suddenly occurred to me that a silhouette figure with his or her hands up in the air could be read in a number of ways. This could be read as defiance and celebration, or it could be read as despair or terror even. I put a number of these drawings together and realised that I could have a whole army of figures, if you like. This tied in very much with the political events that were going on at the time in China, and various things that were going on in Eastern Europe. It all seemed to fit in very well.
The idea of other people being involved in the making of an artist's, in the realising of an artist's idea, I think the thing you have to remember, and this is another idea that informs our approach, the artwork is only evidence of the process that the artist has gone through. If you think about an artwork as a musical score, it doesn't matter that Beethoven doesn't hold the pen that writes down the notes for his music, which are then played by an orchestra and then experienced by other people. No one suggests that the meaning of Beethoven's work resides in the musical score. It exists when it is played, and I think you have to think of an artwork in the same way. The art lies in the playing of the artwork. The idea that every part of it must be made, must be touched by the artist's hand, is redundant. The point is that you're bringing people into contact with artists' ideas.
Construction of Richard Deacon's piece continues in Middlesbrough. He pays a visit to check on its progress.
On the face of the bridge, or
We cast down on the
ground?
no, we won't reach the ground. Looking good. We've done a lot since I was last here.
Pleased.
Yeah, we've done a lot since I was last here. We're slightly worried about the bow on this one, but I'm sure that'll straighten up.
Oh,
yes. I like this detail. I think this works.
Oh, the sniping on the end, yes. That's. And how about the height? Is that?
The height's fine.
Grand.
The team of people on the shop floor. It's very important to me that I have a good relationship with Brian and John, for example, who are the people who are really carrying it out, but also with Bob, who did the drawings in Gateshead. He did a fantastic job. That in its turn makes it a lot easier to work well here. But then, I mean, that would be the same for anybody. I mean, if someone's building a house for you, you want to have a good relationship with the guys building the house for you.
For those workers retraining in new skills at AMARC, working on a piece of art will be something of a novelty. However, it does give them the satisfaction of seeing something through to completion for which they are totally responsible.
And to have something that is made and finished by them, that's what you see. It's not structural steelwork, it's a finished product. It means that they're really investing a lot of skill, expertise, time in something that is going to have a certain degree of permanence to it.
All aluminium.
Yeah, it's quite thick.
Welded?
No, it's screwed.
Screwed.
You can just see the line of
the joints.
The little giant line of screws.
Finally, Andy Miller's submarine torso makes its triumphal way from the Wallsend shipyard to be sighted at the Gateshead Garden Festival.
I think I've gained an awful lot of knowledge from the people that have built it here and how to tackle something this size. This has just been a one-off opportunity up to now. It's the first chance I've been given to do it. I'm very proud to be part of this.
The project was to be made of steel from the beginning because that's the most practical way to make outdoor work. And so we assumed that this would be an area that could supply steel. So what happened, of course, that the project became developed in the local factories and so on. We didn't foresee that in the beginning. We visited shipyards up in Newcastle, and then this whole program of employing the former shipyard apprentices and workers, that was something that was revealed to us as it progressed, then we think that that's a wonderful idea. It's not only a very nice idea to have ships turn into artworks, but this particular artwork has a lot of affinities with a ship being in our original concept, a bottle floating in the sea. And so it has a ship-like quality. When I think of England, I think of two things. I think of something floating in the sea, and I also think of, from an American viewpoint, of literature or of writing. So it seems very natural to put the two together and have a bottle with a note in it, you know.
In true literary style, Klaus has chosen a quote from Captain Cook as the outer skin of the bottle. Kosher has written a personal note for the inside message.
We had every advantage we could desire in observing the whole of the passage of the planet Venus over the sun's disk.
I like to remember seagulls in full flight, gliding over the ring of canals.
Art does show that one can promote confidence in a place. We've only got to look at any historical bank, haven't we? It's adorned with ornate stonework, and that was there to display outward confidence. One of the things that we have artwork in our town centres, our industrial areas, it does display outward confidence to investors, and at the end of the day we'll all benefit.
It would be better to be independent, but anyhow it relates, so why not?
Yeah.
Now the Oldenburgs have come to pick their site for the bottle in Middlesbrough town's centre.
And Klaus, what about there?
I believe that the cultural identity of any area is important. It gives a sense of confidence to the place, it enhances the reputation of the area, and it's the sort of thing that places are remembered about. I believe it's a sound investment for the overall confidence building that it can give an area if people can look with a little bit of pride on their area. Public art comes into that in the same way as theatres, galleries, library services, sports facilities enhance the overall picture of the place to visitors and to people themselves.
It can transform the whole atmosphere of an area, of a city that has known bad times as well as good times. And I think that what it does, apart from anything else, is to introduce a feeling of civic pride, where civic pride was perhaps at a low ebb. It increases confidence, it increases hope for the future. And I think where you get those three factors together, then you have the equation for success.
The submarine torso is subjected to the critical analysis of the Garden Festival public.
It was such a large site, the Garden Festival site itself. It has to be something this size for it to not be totally dwarfed by the landscape, and things like the monorail or the cricket pitch or anything else that's that sort of size. It has to be big to stand against the landscape.
What interests me about the site is it's very specific in relationship to an urban area which has an enormous sense of scale to it, a very exciting urban context. Most of the artifacts that one might think of putting in would tend to be diminished or would tend to get lost. The majority of this sort of panorama up and down the Tyne and into Newcastle, these kind of amazing bridges seem to come into focus. The real reason is it excites me.
It would be nice to think that this could be a permanently installed piece here, but unfortunately it is only a temporary one. What one has done here has been, I hope, to find quite a positive solution to what one can do with the land. Then maybe that points people in the right direction. It helps people to begin to think positively about the way that land can be used. The work is available to be bought by anyone who would like to install it or has a site large enough for it.
The site is at the edge of a new park in the center of town, and it's a very open site. There's quite a distance between the sculpture and buildings, so the sculpture will have its own space. That's important to us. It's not glued to a building or overshadowed by any building, so it will have an independence like a tree in the middle of a space, and the play of light will be very considerable. It'll be quite a focus of attention.
So why not?
Well, I don't see any reason why we can't, go along with the two options and work something up on those and keep it up and, continue to think about it. I know it's a sudden thing to come here and in a way shocked to find that the site has changed fairly dramatically.
Yeah.
And you know, so we do need to think about it a bit more.
Well, it's very clear. If it will be here, it will be more in this area.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And not over there.
Right.
Because we have to get away from that building.
From the building, sort of competition with the building.
There
Yeah. That's right.
When Klaus saw it the first time.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Yeah, but if we look around our towns and cities, they are very devoid of interest. And there's an opportunity really on every street corner, in every space, to have artwork there. I'd like to feel that in the future, just as it was in the past, there will be artwork in every corner. You'll turn the corner, there'll be something there of surprise, something of interest. We are very much working towards, in Middlesbrough, improving the overall environment, and we see art as an integral part of that.
We have encountered bus stops.
This is the
we
experience
never
of a lot
talked
of years of work. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, all
Yeah.
kinds of things creep up to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
But
really
I think we're at one.
Yeah.
Well, look, if we indicate on here where we'd like to have it.
We go the other way around.
What we'll do is we'll do another mock-up of it and send it back to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
The site having been agreed, fabrication continues on Tyneside on the full-scale bottle, with completion due in the summer of 1991. The technical complexities of such a massive work are enormous, and the difficulties are aggravated by the continuing need for finance, not always readily available. Therefore, the visit by the Arts Council Chairman, Peter Palumbo, is eagerly awaited.
You'd like to keep it in the region, so the whole thing is...
I think it's very important that Middlesbrough, I mean, it was always our intention that even though we bought it.
One has to recognise the fact that outside London there is a vitality and a commitment and a perception to the arts that doesn't exist in London. It's just too big. And I think that the contribution made by the regions is a very, very important and indeed crucial one to the artistic life of this country. And it must be nurtured and cherished and funded properly. Now, I think most people would agree that quality of life is at the top of the political agenda nowadays. Gateshead Borough Council has been at the forefront for some